Clint, your head looks a lot smaller without a hat on.
I know.
Look, it looks like you lost weight. That's a great way to do it. Wear a hat and then all of a sudden don't worry. Like, did you lose weight?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for episode 10. Today's topic is e-commerce SEO. But before we do all that, just want to say hi to Kyle and Clint. How you guys doing?
I'm doing wonderful. How are you?
Doing great.
Yeah, all good. All good.
So any news on your speaking calendar, Kyle? I know you're starting to get pretty booked up, aren't you?
Yeah. June, I'm in Dallas for DFW SEM. And then a couple tentative things going on. Oh, April. Next month is SEO spring training, and Clint will be there for that.
Yep.
And then Chiang Mai SEO is in November, as well as DMSS. If you needed reasons to get to Bali or Thailand, those are two excellent reasons.
Nice.
And yeah, I think a couple other things that I'm forgetting, but
yeah, we haven't heard from those NFG guys if they're doing it again this year or not.
That's right.
So we got to poke them with the stick.
In the thriving metropolis of Greensboro, North Carolina.
So, all right. With that, we'll get into our boilerplate. So if you want to learn about us, you can go to SEOfightclub.org. We have brief bios there. We won't bore you with the details here. SEO This Week is another YouTube show that is run by our very own Clint Butler. He goes into detail analyzing all of the SEO articles of the week and boils it down to the 5 or 10 that matter most. And it's a huge time saver. What can people expect this week, Clint?
We talk a lot about e-commerce SEO. We look at a couple of announcements in relation to John Mueller and his ideas on link building and what's counting and what's not. Then we just have a good discussion about some, answering some questions and stuff. So it was a good week.
Nice. So check that out. I highly recommend it. It's a big time saver. So be sure to check it out if you explore a lot of SEO news. Another thing we want to let you know about is we do have a Cora and Pop Skype group. So if you want to ask questions about those tools or talk to the community of users using these tools, feel free to go there. It's a cool resource. Check it out.
Just fill it up quick.
So this week's topic bomb, e-commerce SEO. This is a huge topic. It is gigantic. There's no way we are going to cover everything. So there are going to be huge holes in what we cover in this. Any initial thoughts on this topic, guys?
I think a lot of people in larger e-commerce stores either assume they don't need it or just kind of give up on it. Because in e-commerce, you start generating tons of pages quickly, which kind of creates its own inertia for SEO. But I think also a lot of people just sort of like, I've got 1,500 pages, I can't do anything, and just kind of let it go or let it slide.
Yeah, it gets enterprise very quickly. Any thoughts, Clint?
I like e-commerce, and I like the application both when you're doing like drop shipping, you're selling your own products, or from an affiliate standpoint. So this could be used in all those different markets. So I'm kind of excited about the topic.
Excellent. All right, well, let's dive into it. So the first thing I want to mention is that almost the whole of SEO applies. So just know going into it that all the vanilla basic SEO stuff that most people already know and do still applies. I'm going to go into some of the things that are kind of more important for an e-commerce context. And one of those things is this term that kind of popped up in the early 2000s and then quickly died because it just never caught on as an SEO meme, is ambient findability. And so it's the property of being findable at all times. And from SEO, it comes down to how we name things and how we describe them, and doing that in a way that people use in search. And so you have to get that agreement between how people search for the products you sell and how you name and describe the products and categories you offer. And so that agreement is kind of one of the key strategies to making e-commerce websites work. Any initial thoughts on findability?
Makes sense. Let's go.
Seems basic. All right. So traffic potential. When you start getting into ambient findability, you eventually hit this wall of traffic potential, and you find this right away if your income is based on commissions. Like, the fastest route to learn about traffic potential is to have your income based on selling units organically. And so if you name things in a way that they target terms that have no search volume, then you really shouldn't be surprised when you get no organic traffic from that. And there's a lot of cases in online retail where people make assumptions and do effectively that. So examples would be like this Jaipur store. I don't mean to pick on them, but they rank about 200 for their target keywords. So they're having a lot of trouble. And one of the things I noticed right away is their ambient findability, and they're not targeting things with potential. And the way they're doing that is they're conjoining categories. And so they make a category trying to have a broad reach of, like, you know, cuffs / bracelets / bangles, but nobody searches for that. They immediately lose out on the exact match context, and it probably is complicating the matter on Google's end for what this page is about. And they do the same thing throughout their categories, you know, cups, mugs, and kettles. They conjoin a category. Shoes and heels, wraps and capes. And so doing that, you know, when you look up all of these things in an exact match context and you sum them all together, zero search volume. Any initial thoughts on this one?
I know that gifts and delights is your favorite thing, your favorite e-commerce example.
My favorite pet peeve. Yeah, let's go into some comparisons. So here we have the cuffs, bracelets, and bangles, and I got an equally long tail targeted term, sterling silver bangles. So this one, you know, they are hoping that they can capitalize on cuffs and bracelets and get huge traffic opportunity, but really, you know, it's just going to hug the zero line. But the second you go to something with search volume, you get this. And it's like, well, which one do you want to target the page for to sell units? You know, where is the opportunity actually? And so what I found in my 17 years of doing online retail is that when you start fixing these, switching from these conjoined categories to very specific targeted ones, your pages start going from zero organic traffic to some organic traffic. And when you do that site-wide, that can be a very profound change when all of your pages go from getting no organic traffic to getting some. It can be quite remarkable. So another opportunity, here's gifts and delights. This is one I see commonly. And, you know, what the hell is a delight? When was the last time you searched for a delight, Kyle?
Actually, I do it regularly after you have mentioned that it's something that I shouldn't be doing.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they're illegal in 13 states. But when you switch that category name from gifts and delights to unique gift ideas, something magical happens. All of a sudden, there's some traffic for it instead of hugging the zero line. And this is potential. This isn't what you get. This is potential. But do you want a slice of this blue pie, or do you want a slice of the red pie? And that's what we're talking about when we talk about the potential. And you want every page to have the possibility of getting a decent slice of traffic. And if you're engineering pages that have zero chance of getting traffic, you need to remedy that. And so that's, one of the most important things you can do in e-commerce SEO.
Just for giggles, for the sake of people who might not know, you're using Google Trends for this, right?
Yeah, Google Trends and e-commerce go hand in hand. Thank you for calling that out. This is your tool, and it's so important on so many fronts. Like, you will find that sometimes singular and plural form get different search volume, and there's no hard and fast rule. For frisbees, it might be that the plural form is more searched, and for coffee mugs, it might be that the singular form is searched more. You have to check every time. There's no hard and fast rule. And there's also issues with things like punctuation, like t-shirts, all one word, lowercase, hyphenated, using a white space in between T and shirts. You have these variations of how you can target your page. And if you want to maximize the potential of that page, you got to do a little research into those variations. And so this last one, socks and shoes, equally long tail went with women's socks. And, a lot of people think socks and shoes would have more potential, but it actually doesn't. And, it's this punctuation and conjoining the categories. It's not always a good idea. And we'll get into more reasons too. So we have a conjoined category. So here's an example of somebody doing this. And when you do this, you're telling your customers that if they're shopping for socks, they have to paginate through all the shoes to find them. And that's a terrible user experience. And so imagine, being a shopper, you're shopping for socks, you go to a store, you navigate through the category menu to get to this category. And then you're like, oh, crap, there's, 12 pages of product, and I'm going to have to paginate all 12 pages to view all the socks. A lot of people will get frustrated. Some people will do that. Not all people will do that. Some people will just leave. Some people will get clever and they'll realize that if at that point they do a keyword search for socks, they could filter out the shoes. But that's a really small percentage of people. And
I don't think anybody uses site search.
Yeah, well, some people do. And when I go to websites and I look at their site search logs, most of the usage are cases like these where people have a conjoined category. And you'll see it in the browser history. They'll navigate to the category. They'll go, show frustration. They'll do the site search and then get to the socks. And when you see that in the site search logs, you have a real problem.
Well, for every person that does that, there's got to be some exponential number that simply are not.
Yeah.
If you have to rely on site search to make a sale, I think you're in trouble.
Yeah, and that's exactly the thing you see is a tiny percentage will do that, but it's an indication of a really huge problem. So shoppers don't care if your category is small. They simply don't care. Just break up the socks and shoes, let them see all the socks by themselves. And if you only have 4 pairs of socks, so be it. Don't make them search through 12 pages of shoes to find the 4 pairs of socks.
So size doesn't matter.
Yeah, you just got to stop combining the categories. It doesn't make the store look bigger. It doesn't make it look better. It doesn't make better user experience. The only thing you could arguably say is that it minimizes your navigation. So if you have a 2-tiered menu navigation, and you don't combine your categories, it could get rather long. But the correct answer is switch to a 3-tiered navigation, and you can keep it short and specific. The incorrect answer is conjoin your categories so it fits on the page. So step 1, all of this led up to step 1, audit your store categories. When you get a client, when you get into an engagement, if you're an in-house SEO for an online retailer, just audit the store categories. Make sure each category gets some organic search volume. And if it doesn't, make sure that's really what you want the case to be, because it's probably not going to get any organic traffic. It stands like no chance. And then step 2 is to repeat that same audit, but for the product pages. So in this example, we have this bracelet, and products are difficult. So I usually save products for after categories. Like, we all understand categories, but when you see an object like this, you as an SEO don't really understand what it is and why people want it and what people who are looking for this product will type into search to find it. And you typically need help from the organization to understand that context. And the website this came from called it a pave bracelet for breast cancer awareness. And there's a few problems with that name. One, pave is a technical term. It means that the style of jewelry uses, little metal droplets and has a look to it that makes it look like it's paved. But most customers don't know that. Most people shopping for this won't know this term of industry, and so they won't be searching for it. And this cause is cool, so people might search that, and people will search bracelet, but they won't necessarily search for a bracelet for breast cancer awareness. They might be, but that seems like a remote idea. So I went to trends again, and I started searching. So I searched, the original, and so it was the 0 line for this name. Then I did a pink ribbon pave bracelet, because these are pink ribbons in the design. And that was at least, a hair above the 0 line. And then pink ribbon bracelet. And then all of a sudden we got signal. And so product by product, if you figure out the right thing to call it that people are using to search for this type of product, then you stand some potential to get some organic traffic. And so this would be the step 2, is doing this on a product by product basis. But as an SEO, if you're not familiar with the product, you're going to need help to do this phase. Any comments on the product side of this tuning?
You see technical terms all the time where you might get some resistance from clients that they don't want to take out pave because that's what it is. I think part of this is also massaging the client to get them used to the idea of, you can call it that in the copy, when you can explain what it is. But what we're just talking about is URL structure, maybe your H1s and your metas,
Yeah, exactly. And the way that like Amazon and other large online retailers do this is they have the featured bullet list that tells you some of the highlights of the product. And the pave is more of a feature than a critical piece of information of how people search for it.
Right.
And, the thing that they're likely doing by naming it with a technical term is they're probably, if they do get search traffic, it's probably going to be from competitors who are also selling pave bracelets.
That's a good point.
So step 4, and it's not really a step 4.
Did you mean to skip step 3?
I was gonna say that was the best step.
Oh, geez. 1 second. Step 3. Hey guys, back off. I'm a pro.
Everyone just went, whoa.
Let me take a look.
Step 3 was all the really good information. So. Hey, while we're doing this, if you guys have questions, make sure that you ask in the chat. If you use the 3 little dots so I can spot those, makes it a lot easier.
Step 3, very important. Get your stars. This step 3 should be started at the same time as step 1, really. When you start your engagement, if the online retailer doesn't have ratings and review schema configured, you absolutely need it in e-commerce. It is critical to winning the click. And so other schema that you can put in there is your availability schema, your pricing schema. Those things are good, but they're not critical. The problem with the availability schema is that if you sell out, it actually helps you lose the click because it'll say out of stock in the markup, and people will click on the next website down without even visiting. But the proper way to handle that is to have the availability schema there so it says in stock. And then you 410 you're out of stock, so they fall out of search quickly. And then if you cannibalize, because cannibalization for e-commerce can actually be a good thing. And if you have multiple sterling silver amethyst bracelets, the one that you happen to be sold out of, you 410, it falls out. And the next one you have that's also targeting the term pops in. That's very hard to do. You need to have an engineering team build that custom capability. Most off-the-shelf stores like Shopify can't do that. But if you're in an enterprise setting, then that is a pretty cool trick to always having in-stock product in the search results. All right, let me go back to step 4, full indexing. So this one is tricky. It's probably the most catastrophic failure for e-commerce stores is doing something such that they don't get a complete indexing of their store in Google. And one way you can detect it is by breaking up your sitemaps by the type of page. So have one sitemap for categories, have one sitemap for product pages, have another sitemap for your blog pages or your support pages. And that way you can see if there are indexing issues with a particular type of page, which is a common occurrence for e-commerce. Have you guys done much of that?
You see it all the time. E-commerce store has 500 pages that all have the same title.
Yep. So other things that affect it, duplicate titles, duplicate meta descriptions, the total number of index pages. So you look in Google Search Console for that total number of index pages. And if you know you have 20,000 products and 500 categories, and you go look at the total number of index pages in Google Search Console, if they say you have 500,000 pages, you have a very big problem. You have an infinite crawl somewhere. And so that's why you look at that number, because you want to rationalize it with the number of pages that should be there. 500 errors is another issue. If Googlebot is encountering 500 errors, you can be guaranteed that not all pages are getting indexed. One of our commenters says, don't forget an image sitemap. That's also a good idea. Images sell products, so it's typically a good idea to get those indexed as well. If you see in the logs that Googlebot is adding and removing products to cart, that's a big deal. If Googlebot is interacting with the sorts and filters, that can be problematic. If you're using URL parameters for these features or for tracking, that can also be a problem, and you might have to instruct Search Console to ignore some of those parameters. So those and other issues can cause you to not get a complete index, and that's something you have to look at. That's probably the most critical problem you'll find. Artistic color names. This one always drove me up a wall because it destroys SEO. Somebody who's loading the data into the store platform will get creative and they'll say, this is a majestic sunset scarf. And nobody searches for a majestic sunset scarf.
Kyle did last time we were in Vegas.
I am a scarf guy.
Yeah, if it's a red-orange scarf, do everyone a favor and call it a red-orange scarf. You'll get more organic sales. Even hyphenating the color can be problematic. And then, again, combat that internal jargon. I know everybody understands what women's footwear is, but it's not how most people search for women's shoes. So simply understanding it when you read it is not good enough. You have to understand what people type when they want the product. And this gets into other areas, like people will call things by technical terms. Instead of calling them t-shirts, they'll call them tees. They'll get into the merchandising names for things, which may or may not be the same as how people search for that merchandise. And so you got to be careful of that internal jargon. And then orphaned backlinks. This is another big problem area for online stores because they often do redesigns every 3 years. They're like, oh, we're getting stale. We got to revitalize. We need to get the latest, whiz-bang features into our store so we look Web 2.0 like the other stores. And so they go through these redesign phases every couple of years, and typically when they do that, they orphan all their backlinks. They change the URLs with the new designs or the platform changes, and it's like, goodbye backlinks, we're starting over from square one. And you need to look for that, because typically there'll be a lot of 404 errors, and you can just go and redirect those. Whenever you find those 404 errors, whether it's in Google Search Console or in your Apache weblogs, you just take those URLs and redirect them to the most applicable internal page. Don't do it to the home page, because Google treats redirects to the home page as soft 404s and they don't count. So redirect them to basically any other page other than the home page. And then finally, your goal in e-commerce is to protect the funnel. You want to make sure that everything you're doing leads to a very efficient funnel. And the CRO people, this is what they're all about. It's all about click-through rate and work them through the funnel. And the most efficient funnel is typically the best way to go. And so what you do in e-commerce is you pick a high contrast color and you say that color is always going to be the next step in the checkout process. So from any page in our store, the most prominent thing we're going to have on the page is going to be taking you one step closer to thank you for your order. And so you want to protect that. And one of the places where a lot of online stores get it wrong is they integrate a blog into their store. And they give this new dimension of from any page, you can get to an article, and that article is disconnected from checkout and doesn't have, the complete your order. And it's kind of a distraction from moving people through that funnel. So what I always prefer in e-commerce is separate the blog from the store, put it on a different domain name. And that does a couple of things. It keeps your checkout funnel optimal. And so you can still have your blog. It can target keywords the store can't, and it should hopefully funnel people into the store. But you don't want to funnel people out of the store and into a blog. That's counterproductive. And you also don't want the blog to cannibalize your categories and your product pages. You guys deal with blogs doing that?
The biggest problem is a smaller e-commerce operation is going to have a lot of problems maintaining 2 domains.
Well, what about a small e-commerce operation that maintains a store with an integrated blog, and then the blog takes over all of their category and product rankings?
Hopefully they've got that blog optimized for some CRO and get people back into the store.
Yeah.
I think that if that was happening, though, that's Google saying this is the type of search result it's looking for. So
yeah.
If a blog page with information is outranking the actual product page, then that term is an information term more than a product term in Google's eyes.
Well, what I typically see is the blog page gets, 1,000, 2,000 words. The product description gets, 100 to 200 words, and the category page is totally thin content. And so they're like, why does the blog post always win? Well, the blog post actually has some content to it.
Well, I think anecdotally, too, if you look at the SERPs, I think there's a preference for best of, roundups, reviews, where people can get more information about a variety of products rather than going to a single product page.
Yeah. And the blog is a useful tool. I'm not saying don't have a blog. You're going to have your gift guides. You're going to have your editor's choice, favorite picks. You're going to have your complete the look articles. You're going to have, all that stuff is great. The problem is that it often overlaps the exact same terms that you want to target with both the product page and the categories, and you get the cannibalization. So it's typically, no matter how good of a job you try to do integrating and separation of concerns, it ultimately is, usually a losing battle. And that's why I like to break it out. It seems like a much easier route to go to just separate them. They can both rank independently for the exact same terms. You don't have to freak out about it. And you don't have to spend half your year trying to untangle it. But, it's up to you ultimately. I think it's easy to solve that way. So e-commerce is often an enterprise venture. So you have to make it work, especially with the larger organizations. You have to make it work with a bunch of different business units. You often have to deal with an engineering team that's developing the website. You have to deal with the product buyers whose only function is to go source more product to sell. You have to deal with different marketing departments, or at least at a minimum people. Like, it may not be the same person doing the email marketing as it is doing the social marketing as it is doing the pay-per-click. Those might be different people within a different size organization. And so there are different strategies to getting an online retailer who may not be interested in SEO at the same level or same degree as they are about those other marketing channels. And there are strategies to being successful and getting in the door in those. So for pay-per-click, this one is I think is an easy alliance within an organization because SEO and quality score go hand in hand. You got to tune your page, and usually the same tunings for quality score are the same tunings you want to do to your headings and your content anyway. And if you can make that alliance, then that's like an easy partnership within the organization. Is I'm going to do the SEO, but this is going to help reduce your ad spend for existing keywords and help get you better rankings for those keywords, and reducing cost per click is a big deal. Do you guys find that as well?
Yeah, if you can get traffic going into the site, I always like that better than to a random landing page.
Well, I've been doing that since Derek talked about it and spoke in SIA about it, is using that quality score to rank to help with the SEO. And also it helps to do the conversions all at that time, and it helps to make sure that you're actually targeting the right words at that time. And it saves you a whole bunch of effort on the SEO campaign when it's time to just focus on that.
Yeah. The side of pay-per-click that people often don't talk about is the poaching. And that's a bit more of a touchy subject. And so if you're worried about establishing SEO in an organization, I would probably overlook the poaching. And the poaching is when your pay-per-click marketers decide to pay top dollar for things that you already rank number one for that have no other advertisers. And effectively what they're doing when they do that, they're putting an ad above your number one ranking, is they're moving your organic revenue that has the best margin into pay-per-click revenue. And you'll see that in online retailers where people are given bonuses based on gross revenue for their marketing efforts. And then they'll want to poach every bit of organic traffic they can into paid, even though the store would have gotten it for free. But again, if you're trying to get in the door, don't fight that fight. Just do good SEO and try to establish SEO. But, be mindful of it, that it can happen. Have you guys ever encountered poaching?
You're the only one that I've ever heard has had this problem, but I think you were in a unique situation where you were getting a large commission based on organic performance.
Well, yeah, you need to be in an environment that operates that way. They need to commission on gross revenue. They need to be large enough to have all the marketing channels as different teams. So yeah, it's probably situational.
Because there are a lot of studies that talk about if you've got that one in one position where you're in number one in the paid area, number one organic, your organic click-through rate goes up.
Well,
even if there aren't any other ads.
There's another concept that happens as well that's called spike clicking. And that's when your shopper sees that you're number one organically, and they see you in the ad as well. And they decide that you ought to just pay for their business, and they click the ad anyway. So that happens too. But yeah, those are problems you get at that point.
I call those good problems, actually.
Yep. And,
no, people are coming to our site.
If I have an ad and, I'm paying 25 cents for somebody to click that ad, or they could click the site and get in for free, odds are I'm okay paying for them to visit anyway.
Yeah.
Social is an interesting beast, because what I found in e-commerce is that when you did proper social marketing, what you get following that marketing is a spike in brand searches. And those brand searches lead to genuine click-through rate, which we've all seen the studies over the past year or two that, you know, that can help at least temporarily your rankings in some of those studies. And so I think a lot of the benefit in reaching out to social and coordinating is when you need those brand searches, when you need that click-through rate, you know, that's a lever you can pull. You can orchestrate that to happen.
Well, when people do a brand search, they're coming to a page that's all you. You know, if you've done your other SEO on your parasites, where then when somebody's doing that brand search, everything that comes up is yours. You know, you instantly win that search.
Yep. And so, yeah, I think there's a whole lot of value there. When I was in online retail, we had a collection of properties, and across all of those properties, we had access to 250 million Facebook fans, which is a huge amount. That's comparable to like NFL football on social. And I just want to let everybody know I tried every way in my power to make likes an SEO ranking factor. And I had more resources than anybody I've ever heard of for trying to make Facebook likes a ranking factor. And I could never move the needle once with it. I just don't think likes are a factor. Now, shares and comments and the other engagements, those things tend to matter more, but likes by itself, I don't think it's a thing. What do you guys think on that?
Yeah, I totally agree.
So email is an unlikely ally, but they're a pretty strong ally, a pretty easy ally to get, in my opinion. They align with you in terms of wanting the web page speed improvements and reliability in the app. Because they have the same common denominator. They have the person at the bus station that's staring at their phone that just got a marketing email from the store, and they're trying to click on the nice, pretty image to the product, and they want that product page to open on their phone. And the email team is frustrated because that 36 image upselling carousel on the product page isn't optimized, and each one of those images is a megabyte, and you're trying to download 36 megabytes of photos on a 4G network connection. You have just failed SEO, and you have just failed your email marketing. And so email, because of those types of situations, can be a very powerful ally for SEO. Another key thing is that when you set up your organic revenue reporting, and in large online retailers, this is the thing you have to do, is you have to show how many sales organic produced and what the revenue for organic was. And especially if you're commissioned, you have to do that too. And when you set up that reporting, it's also directly applicable to email. So you can set it up for them too. It's just a different set of source mediums in Google Analytics, but they're easy to spot. You actually have to filter through them anyway to get to the organic ones. And so why not set those up? And when you do that, since you're doing all that work anyway, you just set up the email one at the same time. It allows you to capture a lot of the stuff that the email reporting, which they probably already have, I'll admit, those email teams already have their reporting dialed in. But you can show them the misattributions, and you can show them sources that they're missing, and you can show them how lossy their reporting is, especially if they're going through Google Analytics. And the way that you show the lossiness is you compare total revenue in Google Analytics to total revenue through the payment processor. And the percent difference is the lossiness in Google Analytics. And by doing that, it puts you as an SEO in a position to bolster email's revenue numbers. And so if you get them singing your praise because you recovered 15% more revenue for them just by doing what you were going to do anyway, that's huge. You guys have any other thoughts on email and SEO? I know that some emails get archived. Some online stores will have a web version of every email they sent, and they'll get those indexed as an archive of web-based copies of the email mailings. You guys ever work with those?
I saw that actually where sensitive data was getting indexed through emails that were being sent. But something I was thinking is that emails are often an easier conversion point than asking somebody to give you $150. An email converts very well. So if you can work with the team, you can get an easier conversion point to show that you're effective with what you're doing, and then it can turn into more revenue for the company.
Yep. Engineering. If anybody's read the article I had about negative SEO and the Google bot interruption attack that I faced while I was in online retail, you'll learn quickly from that article that being near and partnered with the engineering team within an online retailer is a very important deal. The problems that engineering have on a day-to-day basis, those are typically the same problems that interfere with SEO. So their bad days are your bad days. And as an SEO, like I became an executive within the online retailer pretty quickly, and I was offered, the corner office. But that was actually a very bad thing that hurt the business by taking the office. And I gave that up to get back into the engineering bullpen, because being in that bullpen with those engineers allowed me to pick up on the problems of the day. It allowed me to coordinate with all the other marketing departments about those issues. And it put me in the central role of being able to advocate throughout the whole business about what we need to do with the technology, with the web page performance, with the issues of the day in recovery. It puts SEO basically in that role of translating engineering issues to the marketing teams. And if you can do that, that can help entrench you. That can make you very important to the organization, because there aren't a lot of people that can be those translators between engineering and marketing. And so SEO is potentially a perfect fit, because SEOs have to be, savvy in speaking about marketing and the business goals, but they also need to be somewhat technical.
Ted, most SEOs are not in-house. Is there a strategy for those that are external to do something similar to this?
Well, what I would do externally is I would want to have a routine communication. Like, I would want to have, it doesn't need to be every day, but, maybe once a month you talk with the engineers and say, hey, what have been the big problems on your plate? What do you see as being the need that the organization needs to do to make the websites perform better for that guy at the bus stop? And if the SEO can help communicate that and help facilitate that across the organization just by acting as a translator between the business units, that's a worthwhile meeting to have once a month. A lot of the big online retailers will have people dedicated to figuring out what the promotions are. Our Christmas sale begins this date. Our free shipping promotions need to cut off by that date. Otherwise, we can't deliver in time for Christmas. And those promotions teams, they're responsible for eking out every bit of holiday revenue you can get. So when you're dealing with e-commerce, Q4 is the big deal. And if you could get one extra day of shipping in, that could be a whole lot of money. And so making sure that you coordinate with those people is very important, because if you can say, oh, free shipping promo, I should make that part of the site-wide footer. That's a big deal. Or, we're deep in this product and we're trying to liquidate it, so maybe I should go site-wide on that product. Being able to help the promotion team achieve those objectives with the organic opportunity is important. So you can find an ally in the promotions team as well, just by taking their goals and making them part of your SEO agenda. The buyers and data entry. The buyers at these organizations, when they have products that don't sell, that they're deep in, those products sit in a warehouse and they sit in a spreadsheet, and they make those buyers look bad. And those buyers eventually grow to hate their mistakes because they have to live with them forever in these organizations. So if you talk to the buyers and say, hey, I need some products to experiment with to try to figure out the formulas we want to use site-wide throughout the store, but can you give me things that are poor performers that we're deep in that I can experiment with for SEO? They can give you a test bed that you can have free reign with. And if you can find successes and help liquidate those things on the books, they're going to love you, and it's going to give you the tool set you need to say, hey, I did these tests with these products, got these results. I think we should deploy these changes site-wide. And so reaching out to those product buyers can be a great way to get the resources and the opportunities you need to make your case. So I definitely reach out to them. And going all the way back to that pink ribbon pave bracelet, the buyers are the people who are going to tell you what the thing is, especially if you're not familiar with the product. So they're the subject matter expert on what the thing is. And the data entry team are usually lesser paid, regrettably, but more vital. They're the people that key in the information that the buyers know into the website so it appears on the product page in the store. They typically manage the category allocations as well. And those people want best practices. So if you can tell them, hey, whenever you're using a product or entering a product, we'll have this list of 2 or 3 special keywords. Try to use those 2 or 3 keywords in the product name, in the heading, in the description. Try to use it, in these fields of the database. If you can give them those best practices, they're going to appreciate it, especially if it helps them make the buyers happy. Any thoughts on data entry?
One thing that I'm reminded of is Derek Booth's concept of listening to potential the visitors to the site when they're calling in and asking questions. Because with the buyers, they're going to give you pave as the name, but then if you listen to how somebody's describing when they're looking for that thing, they're going to give you the pink ribbon. So I would be hesitant to go all in with the buyers in terms of like how they want to describe something. And maybe get the technical name, but then go and find out what the searcher or the user is actually calling it.
No, and you will have some disagreement with these groups, and even these groups will have disagreements with each other. And you're absolutely right. I don't have a slide for customer service, but you can actually find a lot of SEO fires by talking with customer service from time to time. One thing that I found with customer service was that people were complaining about the sizing of certain garments, and so the sizing was off. They'd get it, and they normally buy a medium, but it was small, even though the tag said medium. And so they do these sizing charts with apparel, and I'll go in and look, and they'll be entered in through the content management system. They'll put a graphic of the sizing chart. And that graphic might be a 2 megabyte image file because the person doing the data entry didn't know it needed to be optimized. But just picking up on that complaint and going and looking at the sizing chart, going, hey, that chart is black and white text and a table layout. We could just make that an HTML chart. It'll take no bandwidth, take 2 megabytes off of a page link. Just so, yeah, tying into customer service can potentially lead to those aha moments as well. And then finally, the executives, because that's the goal of every SEO is that seat at the executive table, or at least the respect of, something equivalent to having a seat at the executive table. And, I didn't touch upon how to do organic reporting. That's a whole nother topic for another day. But when you get it dialed in and you're showing orders and revenue for SEO, when you're helping all these other business units with the touch points where SEO touches those business units, you can really start to legitimize and show how SEO can lift all boats. And I think that's really the evangelist role you want to try to take, is that good SEO impacts the whole organization. And when you get into places like Amazon and Nordstrom's and places like that, they get this. They understand that SEO, while it's not the biggest source of revenue, it is a critical enterprise component to revenue. And I would estimate that for most online retailers, when all of their marketing channels are firing properly, that SEO will probably equate to about 15% of gross revenue. But that's because email is going to have a much more direct impact. Pay-per-click can scale with ad spend. You often hit a ceiling with SEO that you can't just increase with budget. So things like that can happen. What do you guys think the marketing mix of SEO is in a healthy business?
85%.
85%.
We're trying to get paid here, Ted.
Well, there's a reality, and when I see SEO being 85%, I think that they're probably leaving money on the table in the other channels. They're neglecting.
Usually at that point, that's a Hail Mary. They think that SEO is going to bail them out of something.
Yeah. And so I think when all channels are healthy, it's probably going to be in the 15 to 30% range.
Seems reasonable.
Yeah, I was thinking like 25% was my answer. So,
yeah. Oh. So I passed the thank you because I'm a pro. So we'll open it up to some questions. Can you handle the questions, Clint?
Oh, there was let's go all the way up through this noise. One was search intent. When you're talking about category pages, how much do you look at search intent for those terms when you try to decide things? I.e., unique gift ideas was an example that you used, and Nick pointed out that that's more content-related term. So how would you approach that if you're trying to rank a category page for a content-related term?
Well, that's a great question. Like, I could have just named the category gifts, but the competition on that is so huge that I normally wouldn't think I could get it. But something a bit more long tail, I could actually get a decent slice of. So I would take a keyword like unique gift ideas, knowing I couldn't get gifts, but I could get a bigger slice of unique gift ideas. And that's better than the goose egg I was getting with gifts and delights. So sometimes, a website's best revenue isn't with the biggest, highest volume keyword. And so, that's the thing you got to recognize is what can you do with the time you have? And especially with a large online retailer, you can't spend a year on that one keyword. So you've got, 500 categories. You got to try to make them all perform to some degree with the time you have.
Question from Patrick. We answered this one on SEO this week too, is because it was from a story that was going around, was e-commerce and category pages, and the statement was from Google: don't blindly stuff text in the e-commerce category pages. And Patrick was wanting to know our opinion on that, and I think you and I covered that pretty good. So maybe Kyle can chime in, but the short version of what Ted and I said was the key word there is blindly and blatantly ignoring the user experience. Kyle, do you have any thoughts on that?
I think it goes back to giving a page that Google wants to rank. I think people stuff words onto those types of pages because they realize that the pages that are ranking have a lot of content on them. That doesn't mean you should stuff onto your category page, but you should look and see what those pages are that Google wants to rank and create that page. And it's probably not stuffing text onto a category page.
Yeah. If you want a great remedy for that problem, go watch this week's SEO This Week.
Yeah, Ted and I kind of banged that one around a bit because we're focusing on category pages ranking higher than product pages, and I think honestly that statement in there is blindly, and people are actually doing that, just blindly putting junk on there to rank a category page versus thinking about using that as a conversion opportunity combined with SEO opportunity. So
yeah, boilerplate text that's on every category page is probably not a great idea.
Yeah. Let's see. Nick, do you guys use Screaming Frog or other tools to find duplicate titles and meta descriptions?
You got to be careful crawling an enterprise site. If it's a small site, there's little harm to it, but if you go up to, a 50,000 page e-commerce store with huge amounts of traffic and run a denial of service bot on the store, you're going to make some grumpy people in that engineering and executive team.
Yeah, I use Screaming Frog and Sitebulb, but both of those have issues when you start talking about big sites like that. I think even with all the settings jacked up on Screaming Frog, the 50,000 page site, it even has issues with that. So it's just to kind of have to be real careful about it. Maybe
you have to go with like on crawl or deep crawl for that.
Yeah,
and you need to get permission from the organization. Don't do it without engineering's blessing.
Yeah, I usually ask for permission after I crash your site.
I just do it. Yeah, just go.
After it knocks it down, I tell them to white label my IP because I'm going to be.
We're under attack. I don't even know what could be causing that.
Yep. Let's see. Travis Hitchcox was wondering if you'd be willing to share the deck. And also, you mentioned the blog post, and he was wondering if you could share that blog post.
Yeah, I'll put links to both in the description after the show.
Okay. Sitemaps. This was a conversation that's kind of banging forth. Is for the image sitemap, how would you recommend handling that? I.e., like on a WordPress site, I redirect the image URLs and they go to the page that the image is attached to. In an e-com thing, when you're creating an image sitemap, how do you handle that?
Well, I would be sneaky about it because I wouldn't want to use the product photo that's actually in the store. I'd want a version of the product photo that has ad copy on it, and so that it ends up being a bunch of ads that get syndicated throughout the web.
And this is kind of in reference to what we were talking about yesterday, where people were finding your pictures posting it on their putting it on their website, but they're pulling off of your server, and you just do some techno magic and change that to an ad to your website.
Yeah. If another website is using your website as a CDN for your images, then yeah, you can do some HTXS magic to turn any web images being served off domain to actually serve an ad for your store. So that's a cool trick to do if people are poaching from your hosting.
But in the case of your image sitemap, if you created one, how would you use the image URLs, or would you use the attached page URL?
Oh, well, for image search, you'd have to submit the images. And so I would do a different version of the images. I'd do an image that's combined with some sort of ad or promotional overlay. And I know that gets a lot more complicated. So not all stores would want to do that, maybe just the larger online retailers.
Yeah.
And there are actually enterprise solutions for doing this, like Liquid Pixels and Scene7 can dynamically, based on a URL parameter, overlay your latest promotional messaging on a variation of an image. So there are enterprise solutions for doing this easily, but if you've got a small store, just make an advertising version of the product image as well as the product image, and then in your image sitemap, do the ad version that promotes the store wherever that image appears.
You're talking about out of stock items. You were recommending the 410. Is that correct?
Yeah. The 404, Google considers it a mistake.
What about the 403, which is the specific question? Can you use that instead?
No, that's a permission denied, and I'm not sure how Google would handle that. That would be a weird one.
Probably, my guess is, based off of the experience that I'm seeing, once you block Google, it's really a pain in the ass to get them to put that URL back in the index. So I think if you say it's permission denied, they're going to take it out of the index, and then you're going to have a hard time getting it back. That would be my assumption.
Yeah, I never had much difficulty bringing 410s back in line once they come back in stock.
Because the difference is it's permanently gone versus temporarily gone, right?
Yeah. The net effect that I saw was that it would just drop out of the index faster. Okay. So the 404s would take weeks and months to go away, and the 410s would be gone in a day or two, and something else could take their spot in search, as long as you had multiple products targeting the same keyword. And that's a case where cannibalization is good for online retail.
What about the situation where you have like 3 or 4 of the same product, you sell out of all of them, and then one comes back? Is it because you're using that 410 when they're all gone, and then it comes back? Are you seeing that it's easier to get it recrawled and popped in the search index? Or
yeah,
it's been a while since it changed, since you've done it, but
yeah, we haven't we never had problems with that. It was pretty efficient. The main drawback to the 410 trick is that it floods your Google Search Console crawl errors with 410s. Yeah. I wish they'd break it out as a separate tab, but they don't. So the one really big negative to the 410 thing is it blows up the errors in Google Search Console.
Yeah, they're getting a little bit better separating those in that drop down. They are still all listed under one, but if you get underneath of that, they're broken down separately. So maybe that would be something that they changed. That'd be interesting to see. Next question is, should we worry about having our own original images and not use stock images provided by the supplier?
Well, I think photography sells. If you have no other choice, if you're doing affiliate sales, then that's kind of what you got. But if you have the fulfillment center nearby and you can get a really nice, light box photo that's better than the manufacturing image, photography sells.
Yeah. And I think we did it. Didn't SIA do a test on stock images as well, Kyle? So it's...
Yeah, an image that Google knows will help the page perform better.
Yeah.
Unique images really weren't overly helpful
But
at all.
yeah, the part where it's helpful is if you have a prettier image. Like people look at the two and one just looks a whole lot nicer.
Yeah.
I mean, side by side in a Google shopping, result, the nicer image is probably going to win the click.
Makes sense. Let's see. Drawing. Kyle, is SIA still alive and kicking?
Absolutely. I think Dory's on this on the thread.
Yeah, I think she is too. Let's see. Ken Tippins, his question is, that's interesting on a blog on a separate domain. I've worked with both scenarios. I definitely understand the cannibalization. I've seen results with both. Have you run any tests? I guess when you say run any tests, can you run any tests versus having subdirectory versus subdomain versus?
Subdomain doesn't help you, and subdirectory doesn't help you. They both get the same cannibalization. The only time you can avoid the cannibalization is when you go with a totally different domain.
Okay.
And, sometimes it's hard to make that business case. I know with one online retailer that sold poker tables, he would break out, we'd call them synergy sites because they weren't his poker table store, which was his business. But he'd make a man cave blog as a separate domain, and he'd make a different website about the rules of the various types of poker games. And so these sites had synergy, and he could cross-link, and each of them developed into their own marketing asset for his store that only sold the tables. And he could advertise the tables on these synergy sites, and he could target keywords that the store couldn't naturally target. And so there's a lot of value to that, and he quickly rose to the top of page one for his keywords. Just by having, probably 4 or 5 of these sites, cross-linking and building up their own traffic. So, were there specific tests? No, but probably, I describe them as anecdotal case studies. And the online retailer I worked for, I had to fight and argue for a lot of things there, and it's kind of difficult. We went from having 15 completely different domains for 15 different stores that all sold largely the same products. And with those 15 domains, we had all of page one and half of page two, come Q4 for most of our products. Then they got the notion that, we could have an authority site. And they took these 15 stores and they put them under one umbrella domain. And then all of a sudden we went from being all of page one and half of page two to being 2 results per keyword. I know which one was better for SEO, but you gotta think about those things. And there are pros and cons. Maintaining those different domains, we had to have different certificates for all of them. Having a shared shopping cart across different domains is a lot of custom development to pull that off. So you're gonna have to weigh the pros and cons on it, but there are definitely some advantages to having different domains.
Cool. Nick added on to, you were talking about talking to the buyers and the data entry people for insights. Nick added you could also talk to customer support and see what their incoming service emails are to know what your target audience is running into, which is good. We actually use that for blog content, or we would do SEO for a major rehab facility that have their own call center. And the FAQs come in, and that's how we develop their blog content, is the FAQs that they're getting from those phone calls. So that's good. That's really good added insight there from Nick. I don't know if either of you guys are doing something like that.
Yeah, no, that's a great idea. I think there's a wealth of information in a customer service department.
And Christopher asked how you're distinguishing, you're attributing a conversion to email versus SEO. How are you using the attribution models standard inside a GA, for instance, or do you have your own custom setup that you like to use, etc.?
Yeah. Initially you just start off with Google Analytics, and Google Analytics has a lot of problems when you start getting into high traffic because you end up spending 6 figures to get your data unsampled. Most people don't know that what you get by default out of Google Analytics is sampled data. So as your traffic grows, if you're not paying Google a lot of money, your data gets more and more lossy as you get into heavier and heavier sampling. And so what you typically find is that there's a whole bunch of source mediums. These are how Google Analytics refers to where the origin of the traffic is. So a source would be Facebook and the medium would be social, or the source would be DuckDuckGo and the medium would be organic. And so there are these pairs of source mediums that you can attribute your e-commerce revenue tracking to. So you can see how much revenue each source of traffic is producing for you. And so you'll obviously look at Google, Yahoo, and Bing and their international flavors. But in addition to that, you'll find that there are syndicated search pages that are large ISPs or computer default home pages and things of that nature that are also Google search, but they just show up as these different domains that are often referral. And so even though they're organic search, they're not showing up as organic, and you need to identify those and put them over into organic because they're showing Google search results, and ranking well in Google means you rank well in those. That's why you appear. There's also other search engines, so Excite and the international search engines and the meta search engines. There's safe search. And then there's misattribution. You'll occasionally, when you look at your referring tracking from your web application and you look at what gets set in Google Analytics, they won't always agree. There's 5% sometimes that'll be mismatch. And you can correct those if you have good referring URL tracking within your store. And so if you're only looking at Google, Yahoo, and Bing, and not all of those other source mediums, you're probably leaving, in a large retailer context, you're probably leaving 30 to 40% on the table. And email is the same thing. You'll see all these webmail source mediums that show up that are obviously web-based email servers and Outlook.com and all these things, where the tracking gets lost because of email formatting handling and things of that nature. You'll see that the tracking gets broken, but you'll see it show up. Like somebody will forward a marketing email to some list, and because it was forwarded, the tracking links were broken. But you'll catch that in the source medium reporting. You'll see that mass remailing of your email actually came through email and generated a bunch of revenue. And so if you look at that in Google Analytics, you can catch those events and get that revenue put back under email. You can reclaim that email revenue and make an outline.
Let's see. I'm going to combine two questions. Do you think that a dedicated IP versus a regular IP matters? And do you think that the type of SSL certificate you have for your e-commerce site matters?
Well, the extended verification, the EVSSL, that gets you the big green bar and the snazziest browser endorsement you can get. That does help, especially if nobody knows your brand. So if you have that trust battle where nobody knows your brand, but you want them to buy from you, then having the extended verification SSL is probably a good idea.
And then the last question for the day is stock images. Kind of sticking on that because this was pretty easy. If you take a stock image and you alter it, i.e. by adding text, does that make it unique, or can you count it as unique, or does Google see it as unique, or do you have to do more stuff to it? I have my opinions on it.
I like Kyle's answer that if you're looking for SEO benefit, then the stock image is something that Google will probably understand the context of.
Yeah.
The only time you'd want to deviate from that is if you can get a more captivating image that would sell the product better.
Yeah, I think also I'm kind of in line with what Kyle says. I really don't worry about it too much, but if I am worried about it or I have a client that's kind of picky, then I'll go over here to the Envato market and buy a Photoshop action. And I won't change fundamentally the picture. I'll just apply a Photoshop action. So, the light leaks, etc. So now it is unique, and I change the file name and add my own exit data, etc. So it's a unique photo, but Google knows what it is more than likely because it's coming from a stock photo place like Pixels or whatever.
You can save the Photoshop plugin purchase. Just open up Photoshop and change the brightness by 1%, and you've altered every pixel in the image.
Yeah, I think Eric Lantries, he was giving away a Photoshop script where it did that for you. Change the brightness, contrast, flip the image over, and it added like a shadow around it. And then Google thought it was unique. So it's really easy if you don't want to mess with this stuff with the Photoshop actions. But I like doing the actions because the images come out pretty cool looking.
Yeah, and it's only unique if there aren't other people using that script on the same images.
Yeah. All right, that looks like that's it for questions.
Awesome.
I know so we stayed here longer because it's kind of upsetting to Kyle. He was hungry, but
it's time to go.
Yeah. So please remember to subscribe, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, subscribe, hit the like button, and bye, everybody.